The Black Code Health Declaration no longer needed for cross-border travels between Hong Kong and the mainland. LegCo passes a bill to reform the Governing Council of the Chinese University of Hong Kong. And ambulances start taking some wounded Palestinians from Gaza into Egypt. Good evening and welcome to TVB News. Starting today, the Health Declaration QR code, commonly called the Black Code for travellers crossing the mainland borders, has been scrapped. But China Customs has reminded those with symptoms such as fever and coughing or have been diagnosed with infectious diseases must voluntarily make a declaration to avoid legal consequences.
The first morning after the Black Code requirement was dropped, many were seen passing through the Lowu border crossing. The gates where travellers used to scan their QR codes remained open. Similar sights at Liantang Hengyunwei Boundary Control Point and Shenzhen Bayport. The border crossing process was smooth without the need to scan QR codes. This man said, "It's so convenient now. It would be a hassle to get my phone from the backpack, not to mention the need to scan the QR code." There were notices reminding people with symptoms of infectious diseases to report to the authorities voluntarily. According to China Customs, those who conceal their health status to avoid quarantine and cause an infectious disease to spread will face criminal liability. Travellers who feel unwell should report to staff members at the mainland port before having their travel documents checked. After making the health declaration, they will have their temperature checked and they must leave their contact information. After signing an agreement for authorities to take their swab samples, officers will conduct tests for COVID and flu. The process takes about 15 minutes and travellers can leave without waiting for the test result, which comes out the following day. Some travellers believe only those who have severe symptoms will voluntarily make a declaration. Hong Kong Security Bureau, meanwhile, welcomes the arrangement, adding that it will maintain close communication with mainland authorities to ensure a smooth operation at different border crossings.
The Legislative Council has passed a bill to reform the Governing Council of the Chinese University of Hong Kong. That includes reducing the number of council members while introducing more external members from outside the university. The motion was passed with 76 yes votes with no opposing votes. 3 lawmakers abstained. The reform will see council membership cut from 55 to 34, while the ratio of external and internal members will be changed from 1:1 to 2:1. In a statement, the CUHK Council welcomed today's result, saying the bill's passage is a key step to enhance the university's governance. The Council added it will work diligently to finalize methods to admit other categories of members soon. Aspiring candidates from some pro-establishment parties and the pro-democracy camp failed to secure enough nominations to take part in the 2023 District Council ordinary election. This has prompted calls on the authorities to review the nomination mechanism.
Currently, aspiring candidates who wish to enter the district council race must garner enough nominations from 3 district committees, namely the Fire Safety, Fight Crime and Area Committees. Lawmaker Michael Tian suggested briefing sessions should be held in future for aspiring candidates to meet members of these committees face-to-face to explain their agenda.
The candidates knocked on the doors of 241 district committee members to explain their election agendas. Some 200 DC members failed to answer the door. 7 of them agreed to nominate us, although 3 of them ultimately decided to withdraw the nomination upon informing the chair of the district committees. We believe that sufficient avenues have been provided to prospective candidates to secure nominations. As such, we don't believe an amendment is necessary at this stage.
Others say the name of the election needs to be changed.
This election is called an ordinary election, the name adopted before 1997. This gives impression to the public that it's very ordinary. So in fact, we should call it a general election.
Meanwhile, the 18 districts in Hong Kong have been rezoned as 44 geographical constituencies with directly elected seats in the upcoming district council election. Lawmakers say the names of the constituencies are confusing voters.
In North District, there is one constituency called Robin's Nest and another. The Butterfly Hill voters are deterred from voting because of the remote locations. They believe the polling stations are on the top of the hill or the mountain. Secretary, please make an improvement.
Eric Zhang said, in general, authorities will consider whether residents are familiar with the names of the constituency before coming up with the official name. Still, he said his team welcomes suggestions in future.
The government recorded a deficit of $177.7 billion in the first 6 months of this fiscal year, adding it has only enough in its fiscal reserves for 10 more months of expenditure. Financial Secretary Paul Chan noted the deficit this year will be much higher than what was earlier predicted for the 2023-24 budget. In just the first 2 seasons, the government spent around $356 billion. That's 1.7 times more than its revenue. Excluding the retail green bonds, the actual deficit is closer to $224 billion, with the addition of the government's $46 billion loan. Some lawmakers said they are concerned the emptying fiscal reserves would lower the city's investment grade. A White House spokesperson said Washington is aiming for U.S. President Joe Biden and President Xi Jinping to meet on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum in San Francisco in November.
I mean, we've been talking about, the president said he's looking forward to meeting with President Xi, and so not going to get into details about this meeting that's going to happen tomorrow's November, next month. It's going to be in San Francisco. It's going to be a constructive meeting. The president's looking forward to it, and I think that should answer your question.
A senior Biden administration official expanded on Jean-Pierre's statements, saying President Xi and Biden have an agreement in principle for them to meet in San Francisco in November. However, the official stressed important details need to be hammered out. In Beijing, the foreign ministry said China and the United States have agreed to work together for the two leaders' meeting. He reiterated that the two sides need to put the consensus of the two heads of state into practice, remove interference, overcome obstacles, enhance consensus, and accumulate results. The Rafah border crossing from Gaza into Egypt has been opened for some wounded Palestinians and dual passport holders to escape the Israel-Hamas war. It follows an Israeli airstrike on the Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza. Dozens of people were killed, with Israel saying a Hamas commander being one of them. David Garrett reports.
Ambulances line up to go into Gaza, and some are bringing the wounded back to a field hospital just inside Egypt. A small breakthrough. It is the first time the Rafah crossing has opened since the war began more than 3 weeks ago. Dozens of injured Palestinians left Gaza. Egypt opened the border for a limited time in a deal brokered by Qatar. Foreign passport holders crowd around the checkpoint. Hundreds of dual citizens were able to leave as well. Aid trucks were ready to go into the enclave too. This is what a small number have been able to escape from. This is Jabalia refugee camp. It is a scene of death and devastation. Israel hit the camp again. It is a Hamas stronghold. Red Crescent workers desperately search for survivors in the rubble. Many helpers stared in shock at massive craters. At least half a dozen bombs were dropped. Several buildings were completely destroyed. There were desperate and chaotic scenes as the nearby Indonesia hospital was overrun. The medical facility shared video on its Facebook page. The injured from the strike appear to be of all ages. This doctor says a large explosion shook the camp. They were just in their homes, he says, confirming among the injured are children, women and the elderly. An IDF spokesperson outlined the reasons for targeting Jabalia. The Israeli military says a Hamas commander there was killed. Daniel Hagari told a briefing they had eliminated terrorist Ibrahim Biari. The IDF say he was involved in planning the October 7th attacks which started the conflict. Hamas denied this, saying Israel was trying to justify a crime against civilians. The sound of more warplanes, Israel hitting Gaza again. There was another internet and mobile blackout. It is the second time in 5 days Gazans suffered network disruption and are cut off from the world. Israel says its forces have hit 11,000 targets. The deaths of 11 Israeli soldiers were announced as the military released footage of tanks and troops pushing further into Gaza. Other pictures came from the Red Sea and show Israeli missile ships deployed. Houthi rebels in Yemen claim to have launched missiles and drones towards Israel. Israel's military said it downed an approaching aerial target off the Red Sea city of Eilat. David Garrett, TVB News.
Washington announced that U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken will visit Israel on Friday before making other stops in the region. This comes as Blinken and U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin urged Congress to send immediate aid to Israel and Ukraine. This as Washington is set to send an additional 300 troops to the Middle East amid increasing attacks on American military bases. Dan Orell tells us more.
The U.S. State Department announced that Secretary of State Antony Blinken will visit Israel on Friday for meetings with members of the country's government and then make other stops in the region. Blinken said on Tuesday that the U.S. and other nations were looking at a variety of possible permutations for the future of Gaza if Hamas militants are removed from control. Earlier this month, Blinken embarked on diplomatic trips to Israel, Jordan, Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates and Egypt in a bid to help ease tensions in the aftermath of the latest Israel-Hamas conflict. The State Department added that Washington has made real progress in negotiations to secure a safe passage for Americans and other foreign nationals who wish to leave Gaza. This comes after Blinken and U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin urged an increasingly divided Congress to send immediate aid to Israel and Ukraine.
We're seeing the profound connections here. What happens in Ukraine, what happens in the Middle East also matters for the Indo-Pacific. Beyond Europe, we know that our allies, as well as our adversaries, as well as our competitors, are watching that conflict. They're watching our response.
I think it's important to remind ourselves that what happens in Ukraine and what happens in Israel matters not to just Ukraine and Israel. It matters to us. It affects our national security as well.
U.S. President Joe Biden's administration's massive $105 billion request faces deep problems in the Republican-led House. New Speaker Mike Johnson has proposed focusing on Israel alone and slashing money for the Internal Revenue Service to pay for it. Blinken and Austin were repeatedly interrupted by dozens of protesters during the Senate hearing. The activists called for Israel to end its bombardment of the Gaza Strip in support of Palestinians, and the hearing had to be suspended as police cleared the room. Meanwhile, the Pentagon said it is sending an additional 300 troops to the Middle East. This as the number of attacks on U.S. bases in Iraq and Syria continues to climb amid the escalating clashes between Israel and Hamas. The additional troops specialize in explosive ordnance disposal and communication and will bolster U.S. personnel already in the region. Dan Orell, TV News.
Still to come on tonight's news. The government considering extending its toleration of minor unauthorized constructions in village houses to the city's urban areas. In Kenya, visiting King Charles voices his deepest regret for colonial violence in the past. And Spain's Princess Leonor pledges allegiance to the Constitution on her 18th birthday. Welcome back to TVB News. The latest policy address suggested amending the Buildings Ordinance. Secretary for Development Bernadette Lin said the government is considering extending its toleration of minor illegal constructions prevalent in the new territories to the city's urban areas. Timothy Lee reports.
Illegal constructions revealed by the heavy rain in the Southern District's Red Hill Peninsula once again raised the public's attention to the problem. Some lawmakers said they are concerned with how authorities can deal with a large number of such cases quickly. Lawmaker Doreen Kong noted the government would consider increasing its toleration for minor illegal constructions to encourage property owners to make active reports on such incidents. This, as Secretary for Development Bernadette Lin said this practice is already adopted in cases involving village houses in the new territories. She stressed authorities are trying to extend the measure's implementation to urban areas as part of the newest policy address. The government's toleration policy came into effect in 2011 because of the large number of illegal constructions among the new territory's village houses. Given authorities had difficulty handling the amount of cases in a short amount of time, the government tolerated owners of properties with minor unauthorized constructions, but required the properties to be inspected by qualified personnel in 5 years.
Lawmaker
and urban planner Andrew Lam championed the policy, saying that illegal constructions are much more prevalent in the city than the rural parts of Hong Kong. He added he does not think the authorities' tolerance will increase chances of residents breaking construction-related laws. Lam also said the Buildings Department and the Lands Department handle an average of 30,000 illegal construction cases and 10,000 cases of unlawful occupation of government land annually. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Infectious diseases specialist Professor Ivan Hong noted the summer flu season has come to a close. Meanwhile, COVID cases have seen an increase in recent days, with estimates of infections reaching a peak between the end of this month and early December. Professor Hong said figures from Queen Mary Hospital indicated a 20% increase of hospitalized patients in the last 2 weeks. He added the coronavirus will potentially reach a peak every half a year owing to a drop in the community's immunity to the virus. Hong urged elderly residents and high-risk individuals to get the jab or a booster and reminded them to wear a mask when entering crowded areas. The body of former Vice Premier Li Keqiang, who passed away last week, will be cremated in Beijing tomorrow. Flags at government buildings around town will be at half-staff. The administration said, according to the notification of the central government, the national flag and the SAR's regional flag, displayed in several government premises, will be flown at half-staff tomorrow. That includes the central government offices, Government House, all boundary control points, as well as Hong Kong International Airport. The former Vice Premier died of a heart attack in Shanghai on Thursday last week. He was 68 years old. Japan is in the final stages of negotiations with the Philippines on what equipment to offer to Manila under Tokyo's official security assistance program. This is according to Chief Cabinet Secretary Hirokatsu Matsuno, who made the remarks to reporters ahead of Prime Minister Fumio Kishida's visit to the Philippines on Friday. Launched in April, the program is aimed at helping boost deterrence capabilities of Tokyo's partner countries. According to NHK, the Philippines is expected to be the first recipient under the program. The report said Japan will provide Manila with maritime surveillance radar and other equipment. Tokyo is also mulling to start negotiating with Manila on joint military drills and other activities. Britain's King Charles on Tuesday expressed his greatest sorrow and the deepest regret, but did not offer a full apology for violence inflicted by the British during Kenya's fight for independence. King Charles and Queen Camilla are in Kenya on a state visit. They saw Commonwealth war graves on the second day of their stay. Both royals laid wreaths in honor of Kenyans who died fighting with the British in the World Wars. King Charles gave a substitute medal to a veteran who had lost his. Samuel Ntigai Muberia is 117 years old. On Tuesday in the capital, the royal couple were welcomed by President William Ruto as they began their visit. They walked down a red carpet lined by dancing Maasai. Some Kenyans have called for a full apology for injustices inflicted by the former colonial power. At a banquet, King Charles made a speech but stopped short of saying sorry.
The wrongdoings of the past are a cause of the greatest sorrow and the deepest regret. There were abhorrent and unjustifiable acts of violence committed against Kenyans as they waged, as you said at the United Nations, a painful struggle for independence and sovereignty. And for that, there can be no excuse.
Princess Leonor of Spain swore allegiance to her country's constitution on her 18th birthday. She is the heir to the throne and in line to be queen. Dressed in a white trouser suit, the princess took the oath in the country's lower house of parliament in Madrid. King Philippe VI did the same when he turned 18 back in 1986. She received a round of applause. The ceremony was shown live on national television. It was followed by a procession through Madrid to the royal palace. Once inside, she received the necklace of Order of Carlos III from her father, King Philippe. Leonor said she was proud and pledged to serve in each moment with respect and loyalty. That's the news. Thanks for watching.